All right, Nick Bosa is holding out, and why that's not necessarily a bad thing. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both locations from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Man, get that brisket chili, even a cup of it. I know in the summertime, it's hot, but man, the brisket chili is absolutely amazing. All right, let's talk Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is officially holding out. And a lot of people hear those words and go, uh-oh, bad news. No, it's not bad news. It's actually great news. And let's talk a little bit about it. There's a lot of interesting angles to hit on this Nick Bosa holdout. First of all, his agent is Brian Aralt, and Bosa will not be there at the first practice tomorrow, and I'm not sure exactly when the deal gets done. It would be fine with me if he missed a week or 10 days of practice. It wouldn't concern me in the slightest, and we'll get into that in a second. But let's talk about Nick. Nick is awesome, right? He's an all-pro defensive end. He's the reigning NFL Defensive Player of the Year. And as John Lynch told us earlier today, he's not with the team. He's trying to get his second contract in the NFL finalized. And under the CBA, a player like Nick Bosa, under his fifth-year option, is subject to a daily fine of $40,000 per day. But the Niners can waive that, and they will waive that. They're not going to fine him. There's no acrimony here. There's no bad feelings between from either side. So who cares? It's like one of those, he's subject to daily fines of $40,000. And I've heard people read people, writing stories of, he's going to accrue a bunch of fines. No, he's not. He's not going to accrue any fines because the Niners can and will waive Bosa's fines. You can take that to the bank. Now, if Bosa were holding out under his second contract, see, he's under his first contract, going into the second contract. But if he was in his second contract going to his third contract, the fines would not be waivable. So who fits that description? Chris Jones, the Kansas City defensive tackle who's holding out in Kansas City. He gets fined every day, and the Chiefs don't have the ability to waive those fines. So it's a totally different situation. Bosa deserves a massive record-setting contract. Why? Because he's the best. And I guarantee you this, he will not hit the field until he signs his new deal. Kyle Shanahan was asked about that today and basically said, I wouldn't play. I wouldn't play without a contract, and Bosa won't either. Brian Aralt will not allow Nick Bosa to hit the field and put on a uniform and get out there and risk anything until the ink is dry on this new contract. Now, let's talk more about Bosa in the year that he had this year. 18 and a half sacks in 2022, 51 tackles, 48 hits on the quarterback. He had 19 tackles for loss. He's really good against the run. A lot of edge rushers are just get the quarterback, and they're terrible against the run. Bosa's great against the run. He was second in the NFL in tackles for loss with 19. Just to put his production in perspective, no NFL player has more sacks over the last 2 seasons than Nick Bosa, who has 34. The Atlanta Falcons as a team, I believe, over the last 2 seasons have like 36 sacks. So Bosa is basically out-sacking, the Atlanta Falcons over the last 2 years. And if you looked last year, Bosa, as I said, had 18 and a half sacks. I think the Bears, as a team, had 20. So that's how great Bosa is. He single-handedly, provides more pass rush than the Bears' entire team last year, and over the last 2 seasons, almost more than the Atlanta Falcons' entire team. So this guy's a freak. He's an amazing player. Everybody knows it. He's heading into his 5th year in the NFL. And if you look at the numbers and do your research, he's in line for about a 5-year deal for roughly $167.5 million. So he's going to get $33 million a year, maybe 33.5, and maybe even a little bit more than that. We'll see, but I think that's really where it's going to come in. There's been a lot of numbers floated. My homework tells me 5 years, 167.5, $33.5 million a year annually. That's what he's going to get. It's record-setting money, and it's part of the reason this thing's taken a while because it is record-setting money. We're talking about precedent-setting cash going to Nick Bosa. When you're the best in football, these contracts take a little longer because everybody's aware that this sets kind of the new precedent in the league. So every I is going to be dotted, every T is going to be crossed. Brian's going to be very careful. The Niners and Prague are going to be very careful. But the deal's going to get done. And if you look at Bosa, Bosa's just such an awesome player. Last year, he drew more double teams than any other defender in the entire league. How about that? More double teams than any defender in the NFL. That's what Nick Bosa does. Now, that's the beauty of Javon Hargrave, because now you add a second guy like Javon Hargrave, who got double teamed a ton as well last year. And good luck to opposing offensive lines. When you have one guy on a D line that needs to be doubled, you got a problem. When you have two guys on one line that have to be doubled, you got a major problem. And that's the rub. That's why the Niners risk some of their defensive end depth to go after Hargrave, because if they added a second dominant player, a second player that constantly commands doubles, changes everything about how an offensive line blocks a defensive line. So I think Bosa's the number one edge rusher in the league. And it's a league that has some damn good ones. Micah Parsons is a player. Max Crosby's very, very good. There's no question that T.J. Watt's a great one. Myles Garrett is a freak of nature. But Bosa's better than all of them. And he's good against the run. He's good against the pass. He's just a tremendous football player. And he's a force. He's an absolute force in nature. And I think with the addition of Hargrave, you're going to see Bosa become even that much more of a force. And if you told me that Bosa put together a 20-sack season this year, I would not be surprised. That's what Hargrave is going to do to Bosa if they both can stay healthy. Now, I think the Niners ought to take their time with Nick Bosa. In my opinion, I don't need him there this week. I don't need him there that next week. I really don't. When you look at what Nick means to the 49ers, I got no problem with him sitting out for a couple weeks. If Bosa didn't play but one preseason game, I'm fine with that as well. Nick Bosa means so much to the 49ers defensive line. He's so integral that anything that you can do to back him off in meaningless preseason games and meaningless practices, I would do. That's what he means. You got to have him. An injury to Bosa would be crushing. You can't have him getting hurt in practice. So anytime you put on the pads, anytime you bang heads, anytime you play live, anytime you're going full contact, there's a chance somebody's going to get hurt and be done for the year. So I have no problem sitting him out. And I think if I'm the Niners, when Brian Arold calls, I'll call you back. Oh, sorry, Brian, we were busy today. We'll call you tomorrow. I'm delaying this thing and stalling this thing out for at least a week, maybe longer. I'd be okay if they stalled it out for 2-3 weeks. I really would. Why? Because he means everything. You can't do this year without Bosa. You got to have Bosa. When you went out and got Hargrave, what was the impact of it? Well, I just told you the positive, right? You got two guys on your front that have to be doubled. When you got two guys on your front that have to be doubled, you got a defensive nightmare for offensive lines. But it's a cap sport. So what happened? You had to say goodbye to Samson Ebukam. He's now a Colt. You had to say goodbye to Menahue. He's now in Kansas City. You had to say goodbye to Jordan Willis. He's now a Raider. And you lost some of the depth on this defensive line. This defensive line now is way more top-heavy than it was a year ago and not nearly as deep. You replace those three outstanding young rushers with Cleveland Farrell and Austin Bryant, Robert Beal in the draft. Those guys are not the equal of the guys that walked out the door. So there's going to be a greater emphasis. The Niners' first-team D-line of Drake Jackson, Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, and Eric Armstead, that's the best they've had maybe in this regime. It might be better than the four guys they had up front with Buckner and D Ford when they went to the Super Bowl against Kansas City a few years back. But they've taken a little bit of a hit as far as the quality of the depth. Cleveland Farrell is not as good as Samson Ebukam. Ebukam's way better pass rusher, way faster, way more athletic. Farrell is nice. He's a decent replacement, but he's not nearly the same player. Beal is a guy that has great traits, but there's a lot of unknown there. Austin Bryant, was a great pass rusher at Clemson, hasn't necessarily been able to replicate that in the NFL. So they lost a lot of their quality depth, and I don't think they replaced it with, like players. I think the players they replaced them with are suitable and fine, but not as good as the guys that walked out the door. So what does it all mean? You don't want to get Nick Bosa hurt. So I don't care if Nick Bosa plays in the preseason at all. I'd be fine if he holds out for 2 more weeks, 3 weeks. Nick Bosa holdout because of the lack of really easy to define stories is going to get passed around to the media as a problem. It ain't. It's not a problem. It's a blessing. You don't want Nick Bosa going down in practice. You don't want Nick Bosa even playing in the preseason if it's my team. He means everything. He's a proven entity. Play the other guys. Find out about Beal. Find out about Farrell. Find out about Austin Bryant. Heck, sign a couple other guys if you have to. Find out about Spencer Wagey. Find out about your other defensive linemen. Give Marlon Davidson some run. Find out if Alex Barrett's legit. You don't need to play Nick Bosa. You don't need Nick Bosa right now. You need him for Heinz Field in week 1. And whatever, and you don't want him to be rusty and you don't want him to be, out of shape. But this guy works incredibly hard. He's going to be in absolute perfect shape. So find out from him how many reps do you need and baby him. And I'd get him out of games this year that you're winning, even if it hurts his sack total. I would protect him. I would make sure that I was taking him off the field in every situation where I possibly could, because that's how much he means. You need Nick Bosa to win the Super Bowl. You need to get him through all 17 games and 2 or 3 playoff games and get into that Super Bowl with a healthy Nick Bosa. So I don't care about the holdout. I welcome the holdout. The holdout's not a negative. The holdout's a positive. This is the best defensive end in the game, and if he wants to hold out the 3/4 of the preseason or for the next 3 weeks, he's got my blessing. All right, hope you enjoyed the video on Nick Bosa. And once again, remember, anytime someone says Nick Bosa's holding out, oh no, you say, hey, wait a second. I saw the Krug show. Nick Bosa's holdout is a blessing. Tell everybody you know. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Check them out. Emeryville and Corte Madera, 2 locations, open from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. in both spots, 7 days a week. Get the brisket chili. Say hi to Damon, say hi to Mary. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.